with Tony Messenger, St. Louis Post-Dispatch columnist, here on the Big 550 KHOS. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning, McGraw. How are you?
We're doing good. It's been a difficult 24 hours for the city and the region with the highway shut down yesterday after that shooting, and then the governor's wife getting arrested at gunpoint. What are your thoughts as you wake up and you hear this news this morning?
Well, I mean, people who have lived in St. Louis know that this sort of thing happens in spats sometimes, where you just happen to have a fair amount of gun violence in a short period of time, generally speaking unrelated, but it is a reality in the St. Louis region that there's a lot of people out there with guns, and there's a lot of people out there that steal guns and use them for carjackings and all sorts of horrible things. It's not good what happened to Sheena Greitens. The police apparently did a pretty quick job of getting some folks arrested, but that's part of the reality that St. Louis has.
The reaction I'm getting from the Twitter line, the text line, some comments this morning is that people are sort of coming down on the media for making this a story, and that if it wasn't the governor's wife, it really wouldn't be a story. Don't talk about it, McGraw. You're shedding bad light on the city of St. Louis. You're piling on. This really isn't a news story. It seems like tensions are high and nerves are frayed when it comes to talking about crime in the city of St. Louis.
Well, I mean, first of all, the governor-elect is having a news conference today, so you can't exactly blame the media for responding to something like this happening, and the governor-elect, I think appropriately, is going to make himself available to talk about it. And this is one of the difficulties in dealing with this issue in St. Louis is we do have crime. All major cities have crime. We have gun problems, but this is a city that has tried to get the legislature to help it with its gun problems and been shut down. So there is an element of an incoming governor being involved where perhaps he can recognize, you know what, we've got a problem with guns in the city of St. Louis. The police chief wants to do something about it. What can I do to help the police chief? I believe that's an appropriate narrative, an appropriate discussion to have. And I don't know if that's the discussion we're going to have today and moving forward because of what happened to Sheena Greitens. But I think it's part of the discussion to have.
It's interesting you bring up the guns, and guns is a hot topic all the way around. But this is a governor that won an election firing off multiple rounds of machine guns in his commercials, and then to turn around to have his wife arrested at gunpoint. Are you bringing up the irony of this whole thing?
Well, there's a second layer of irony in that. The governor-elect was not endorsed by the National Rifle Association. His opponent, Chris Koster, was. And I don't know if that's because Eric Greitens doesn't yet have a record on gun legislation, or just because they were loyal to Chris Koster, who they had endorsed previously. So despite the governor-elect's fetish with guns in his advertising, I'm not exactly sure we know yet where he stands on some reasonable gun policies in a city when a police chief and a mayor want to do to try to reduce the amount of guns on the street.
Is it just guns? Isn't it more than that? Isn't it just a societal problem? I mean, there's not one thing that'll solve this problem, which is sort of why we're in this situation.
No, it's all sorts of things. It's investment in education. It's an investment in jobs. It's people living in poverty that is generational, that hasn't been addressed. It's not enough police officers. It's not even, being able to get your police force to the level that it's supposed to be. It's whether or not community policing is being implemented in the proper ways. I mean, it is a deep issue, and the irony here is the one conversation that I had and some of my colleagues at the Post-Dispatch had with Governor-elect Greitens before the election, we talked about some of these issues, and he appeared to be saying that he believes the issue of violence in cities is very deep, that it's not just about guns, it's not just about police, it's not just about stop and frisk, it's about a whole variety of strategies. I hope that's what we hear from him today.
Tony, we'll leave it there. STLtoday.com is where we read your column, and also the newspaper that shows up on our front doorstep, and every Tuesday and Thursday here on the Big 550 KTRS. Tony, have a good week. Thanks for checking in.
Good to talk to you, McGraw.
All right, 825, Big 550 KTRS.